They come in and put on a Pennsylvania license plate on their car.
You can't.
Start paying local taxes. They still can't buy a resident hunting and fishing license. They can't come to Penn State as a resident, but they are residents of Pennsylvania.
Well, I'll tell you, they won't have time to go hunt and fish because that's not the way the industry operates.
In Oklahoma, when a guy gets to buy multiple license plates for his car every year because he's trailing a rig around, he's a resident where he's at. So this constant Pennsylvania resident is a real tough one to get a handle.
Yeah, it is.
Well, one other aside with defining kind of occupations like this, some of the economic studies that have come out, labor and industry, for example, put out a study a while ago about labor requirements. And what they did is they basically looked at a very narrow slice of occupations within this area. You know, if you're looking at the drilling rigs, or the roustabouts and other kind of labor requirements, their numbers are very different than if you include the totality. So it's important when you're looking at any study, ours as well as others, of trying to clearly understand what is exactly what are they including, what are they not including. And at least the more specialized ones I've seen have not dealt with this. They've been more narrow within a NAISC code or just directly related to the specific occupation.
Sorry, I didn't mean to keep up more slides, but the other big question is how many of the jobs are new or being transferred from other professions. I mean, look at the forest industry. The biggest concern is that they take these larger jobs because they pay more in the gas industry.
Yeah.
Is anyone looking at new jobs?
That is, well,
I call it job migration is what I call it.
yeah, it's new jobs, but what is the impact on the other sectors of the economy that required those skills that either are no longer able to keep them or are not able to maintain kind of competitive wages?
I can tell you that the Central Pennsylvania Workforce Investment Board is very concerned about that in their discussions as they see some of their most skilled workers being going into the gas industry. And then the question is, how is that pipeline going to get filled with those vacant jobs? And what that effect is going to be, I mean, everybody can kind of see that piece, but the ultimate effect is there going to be somebody at the bottom of the pipeline to continue to fill that in. We're sitting in a situation where economically we may have some workers sitting out without jobs, so we don't see maybe as much of an impact as we would in a period of high employment. But again, I think we've got some issues.
We got a couple more slides I want to cover. One of the other things, this is a more numerical way of looking at this is the number of wells drilled a year, the jobs directly related to kind of the drilling phase employment, and kind of the new production. So when they come in production, the additional new jobs, and so you can see kind of the grand total workforce there over time, and combined the total number of production phase workforce increases over time as there are more wells that are brought into production. And this is based on the estimates of what's going on. Did you want to? Yeah, I think you were going to talk about.
Yeah, I can talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we talk about the workforce and let me get this going here. When we talk about the workforce and what it is that the companies are looking for, the thing we hear repeatedly has to do with this ethic of work and how that ethic of work is somehow different than the ethics of most work that we know about. What does it take? And now we're really talking more about that 75, I'm going to use just a round number, 75% that are the short-term training jobs than we are. I mean, the lawyers are still working regular hours and the geologists are too in general. But when we start talking about the CDL workers, the folks who are doing the general labor, the heavy equipment, we are talking about a different set of characteristics. Number one, a work ethic that requires a willingness to work The comparable environments that I've heard people talk about are these. I think it's very interesting. One would be the farm analogy of you get up when the sun comes up, you go to bed when the sun goes down, and you work and you do whatever you have to do to keep the farm operating. And if that means that you're doing mechanical things one moment and you're doing something that has to do with dealing with animals, and then you're doing something that has to do with growing crops, you do all of those things and you do them well, and you're just you can do them all and you work until the job's done, regardless of what comes in front of you that day. The second parallel would be combat military, that you know somebody's got your back. And when you're actually on the workforce, especially on these rigs, that at every moment safety is primarily number one. And that job is that you have to be able to worry that Tim's got, if I'm working, I got to worry that Tim's got my back in case something goes wrong. And so there's this sense of culture that's a little different than any of the workforce we currently have. Drug testing is a non-negotiable. That is probably the single biggest thing that kicks out the applicants that come through our door for the short-term training. We may have 400 applicants and 20 or 30 of them will make it. There are some trainings that they start them every day at a different time. Maybe someday they'll start them at 3 in the morning. Someday they'll start them at 10 at night. Sometimes they'll start it day after day. They'll change the time to make it feel like the work, because when the drill's operating, long hours and very unpredictable hours. That's that blue collar again, reliance on that on-the-job training. What we see is that customized training, there's both private providers as well as two-year colleges, as well as high schools, career and technical programs that have adult education programs are all right now responding to the short-term training need. And that's where you see those kind of trainings go on. This morning when I pulled into the parking lot at my building, I happened to work in the workforce development building at Penn College, it was already totally packed with big trucks. And it was because they were having a fit for safety or fit for natural gas training, which I don't know what time it started. It must have started at 5 or 6 in the morning. You have the clicker, don't you? Okay. Willingness, people's willingness to work the hours, like I said, incredible hours, workers that have the experience they need. And so this is the issue of us not having a legacy. That is, we haven't been an extraction-based economy here other than some oil in the Northwest. But in general, a lot of the areas that are currently being drilled, we don't have that legacy. And so we don't have a lot of experienced workers, and we don't have the workers with the appropriate set of technical skills. Those are the things. You can see the percentages of what it is our companies say why they're not hiring locally and why they're not hiring Pennsylvania. There we go. They're going to increase dramatically. We are at a position right now, I mean, we're just at the very beginning of there's a lot of debate on how long the boom is. There's a lot of debate. If you ask Jeff Lorson, one of my colleagues, he does his math, which I don't buy totally, he has this boom going for about 50 to 60 years. I'm not sure I buy it quite that long, but it's certainly not a 5-year boom. I'll just say it that way. We think that, as you know before, as we talked about before, we're talking about 7,000 to 12,000 jobs pre-drilling by 2014 in these 5 counties. You add what we already know about the northern tier. I'll be interested to see what these numbers are going to look like when we get the statewide one done. That's kind of more than you ever wanted to know in a nutshell. Yeah?
I'm cautious about your statement about increase dramatically. That confers to me that there's a sharp incline on that curve. The data you just presented shows a more level incline over time.
You're right.
It's job and growth.
But what's going to, I think, grow, and again, is the number of counties that they move into. And so right now we see a lot of activity in a small number of the potential counties where there could be rigs and there could be wells. So even if in the individual counties it doesn't grow, the number of counties by themselves will grow in the activity. I mean, that's why I think it's going to go up. I don't know, Tim, your assessment.
I think it will increase. I agree with you, Michael. I think the word dramatic probably is not appropriate. One of the things that I...
Here, Right.
One of the things that I feel good about the study is the numbers that we come up with seem to me kind of in the ballpark. They're not outrageously high. They're kind of conservative estimates. And, you know, 7,000 jobs is a good number of jobs, but it's not a huge, significant.
It's not 100,000.
It's not 100,000 jobs. But yet it is a contribution to the economy. But the word dramatic is probably overly dramatic.
I think it's dramatic. Why I say it's dramatic, I guess, is because of where I live. And when you look at a workforce that maybe only has a county that only has a workforce of 30 or 40,000 people, and it has an impact of 1,200 jobs, that's a dramatic number of jobs. And these are the direct jobs. We're not even talking about the hotels I see being built and the other kind of activity that you see. I mean, we didn't ever see any stores go out of business in our region in terms of retail stores. We didn't see an economic bust. Can I say it happened because of this? No. Do I have that evidence? No. Could I guess it had an impact? Yeah. So dramatic in some ways, I think, living in a very rural area.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah. If we can figure out like how many job opportunities would be from the local, and do you have any other examples from other extraction sites from the Texas or Wyoming, or what proportion of the job was created from the local, and how many they brought from their Texas or somewhere?
It's a good question. I've not seen that from other states either. I've not had much time to look for that, but the searching I've done, I've not found that. And I think politically that is such a sensitive question now about there's jobs, but how many go into Pennsylvanians versus out of state? There's not an easy way to capture that, to understand that.
And I'll be bad for a minute and say, what if, okay, so you're Pennsylvanian, all right? And we train you and you end up working, and then and then suddenly the shale play in down in Haynesville heats up, and now you move to the Haynesville play down in the South. As a U.S. citizen, I'm happy. I'm glad that it's not a Pennsylvania issue. It's a U.S. economic issue, and I know that politically in this state there's an issue, but the reality is it's an industry that needs workers, and whether they come from Texas or Pennsylvania, I really don't care. I think there's job opportunities from what I can see, and if the geologists may not get the job here, they may get the job in Houston, but it could be from anywhere. So I think labor markets aren't just state-based, and I don't think that's. I hate that conversation. I just hate that conversation.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you get a handle on the number of companies or partnerships or industries in the supply chain, that might give you an indication of where they're from, because I'm thinking like the Chesapeakes and the Abbotts and everything are subcontracting, subleasing a lot of the operating interests to local. Are they to local people or are they to out of state?
It's a mix. But anecdotally, it's a mix. It depends in part on how specialized the skills are. I don't think we
have an inventory of companies involved in.
I'd say Pioga's membership list would be the best.
Yeah, but it's changing so quickly that even if there's a list, it would be out of date immediately. But even identifying, okay, the company, is it headquartered here in Pennsylvania or not, that by itself still doesn't get at the issue of, are the workers working for that company, are they Pennsylvanian, or are they being brought in from elsewhere?
Does it?
It's a real tough issue to sort out. We typically don't care about, it's not a question we usually ask with other labor markets, other industries.